I thought I knew exactly how life was supposed to go. Love, marriage, family. But sometimes, life throws you in a direction you never saw coming. What started as the perfect plan slowly unraveled into something I never expected. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, I always believed marriage was meant to last forever. My parents, John and Mary Thompson, were the perfect example. Their relationship felt solid, like the foundation of our home, built on love, respect, and quiet devotion. They never raised their voices, never fought in front of us kids. At least, not that we ever saw. It seemed like they had unlocked some secret to making it all work, and I soaked it in, assuming that's how all marriages were supposed to be, effortless, unbreakable. So, when I met Megan in college, I thought I was stepping into the same kind of love story. She was everything I wasn't: outgoing, charismatic, the type who could light up a room just by walking into it. Where I sought the comfort of solitude and books, Megan thrived in the energy of people, always surrounded by friends. She had a magnetic charm that drew me in, and despite our differences, we fell in love fast. Opposites attract, right? By the time we graduated from Kent State, we had already mapped out our future together. Everything felt so clear, so inevitable, like we were following a script written just for us. After all, that's how love works, isn't it? We got married in a small ceremony just outside Cleveland. Nothing extravagant, just close family and friends. I remember standing under that bright Ohio sky, thinking we had it all figured out. It felt like the start of something beautiful, something permanent. Life moved quickly after that: jobs, bills, and soon, two beautiful daughters, Katie and Emily, who became the absolute center of our world. Megan was always fiercely independent. She kept her last name, something that I didn't mind at the time. In fact, I admired it. It was just part of who she was, this bold, self-assured woman who knew exactly what she wanted. I thought that confidence was what made us strong. We built a comfortable life in Columbus. I got a stable job at a small accounting firm, while Megan climbed the ladder as a marketing manager at a local tech company. Life was busy, but it was good. At least I thought it was. Looking back, I can see the signs, the cracks in the foundation that I chose to ignore. I had always been the kind of guy who thought that as long as I was working hard, providing for my family, everything would fall into place. But Megan, she was out there, meeting people, expanding her world. I told myself it was fine. We were just doing our parts. But now I wonder if I should have seen it coming sooner. The night everything came crashing down started like any other. The house was quiet, the kids were asleep, but Megan seemed distant, more distant than usual. There was something heavy in the air between us, something unspoken. Finally, she sat me down, her eyes avoiding mine. That's when she said it. "I've met someone," she confessed, her voice low, almost hesitant, as if trying to cushion the blow. "It's just a fling, it doesn't mean anything." Ryan, some guy from her office. She said it wasn't serious, that she still loved me, that we could get through it. But all I could hear was that she had been unfaithful. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and suddenly everything I thought I knew about our life felt like a lie. For a moment, I couldn't even find the words to respond. It was like the ground beneath me had crumbled. I never imagined this could happen to us. Not us. We were supposed to be different. I just sat there, nodding like a robot, pretending to listen as she tried to explain. But deep down, something in me was already shutting down. Tonight, she's with him again. I know where she is, who she's with. And yet, I'm still here, sitting in this house that feels colder by the minute. I watched her leave earlier, dressed up like she was heading to some fancy dinner, smiling awkwardly as she kissed the girls goodbye. She even tried to kiss me on the cheek, as if that gesture meant anything anymore. I turned my face away, unable to even look at her. How could I? How could she? What does it say about me that I'm still here, holding on to the last threads of a marriage that's already fallen apart? I'm stuck in this mess, wondering how it all came to this. I've cycled through every emotion: rage, sadness, confusion. But in the end, there's only one thing left: reality. This is my life now. And somehow, I have to figure out how to live with it. After Megan dropped the bombshell about her affair, it was like my world collapsed in on itself. Every bit of trust, every memory we had built together felt tainted. I was drowning in a sea of anger and confusion, desperate to find some kind of lifeline. There was no way I could let this slide, but I didn't know what to do. So, the very next day, still numb from the shock, I went to see a lawyer. I walked into a small law office in downtown Columbus, feeling like I was on autopilot. Everything around me felt muted, surreal. The lawyer, Jessica Andrews, was sharp and no-nonsense, but she listened patiently as I spilled everything. My hurt, my rage, the betrayal that still felt too raw to even process. I poured it all out, hoping there was anything she could do to make this right. When I finally finished, she leaned forward and explained things in a voice that was calm, almost too calm for the chaos in my head. "Ben, Ohio is a no-fault state," she began. "That means the courts aren't interested in who cheated or why. Their main concern is what's best for the kids. And usually, that means siding with the mother unless you can prove she's unfit." Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. "So, you're saying she gets the kids? The house? Everything? And I just get stuck paying for it all while she runs off with him?" Jessica's eyes softened, but her voice didn't waver. "In most cases, yes. The courts prioritize stability, and that often means keeping the kids with their mother. You'd probably get visitation every other weekend, maybe a few weeks in the summer. But yes, Megan would likely keep the house and primary custody." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like the world was conspiring to strip everything away from me. Not just my wife, but my home, my kids, my entire life as I knew it. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked, my voice trembling with frustration, barely holding it together. "You could try to fight for custody," she said carefully, "but unless you have solid evidence that she's neglecting the kids or creating a harmful environment, it's a long shot." Her words didn't just sink in, they buried me. It felt like I was powerless, trapped in a nightmare where I was destined to lose no matter what I did. Megan was going to walk away with everything, our children, our home, and leave me behind to pick up the pieces. How was that fair? Desperate for control, I asked, "Can I at least kick her out of the house?" Jessica shook her head, her expression serious. "That would backfire, Ben. If you force her out, she could claim that you're creating a hostile environment, especially with the kids involved. In that case, you could be the one forced to leave." My hands clenched into fists as frustration boiled inside me. "So what am I supposed to do? Just sit here and take it?" She leaned back in her chair and let out a slow breath. "Sometimes it's cheaper to keep her. I'm not saying it's what you should do, but if you tolerate the affair and avoid a divorce, you could keep the house, your money, and most importantly, your kids." That suggestion made me sick to my stomach. Live with her betrayal, just to hold onto the scraps of what we had built. The very thought of it twisted like a knife in my gut, but losing my daughters, Katie and Emily, sounded even worse. I didn't want to be the dad who only saw his kids on weekends, who watched them grow up from the sidelines. So, for now, I stayed. I swallowed my pride, my anger, and I stayed. But each day felt like I was living in a house of cards, waiting for the inevitable collapse. Our marriage was a ghost of what it had been, a hollow shell that we were keeping up for the sake of appearances. But deep down, I wasn't ready to let go of my family. A few weeks later, I finally worked up the nerve to sit down with Megan. I didn't even know what I wanted to accomplish. Was I looking for an apology? A way to fix things? Or was I just desperate for anything that could bring us back to how we used to be? We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had once made plans for our future, now feeling more like a battlefield. The tension between us was thick, the air heavy with all the things left unsaid. "So," I started, barely able to keep my voice steady, "what's the plan here, Megan? How are we supposed to stay married if you're seeing someone else?" Megan didn't flinch. She stayed calm, too calm. "Ben, I still love you. I love our family. What's happening with Ryan, it's just something I need. It doesn't change what we have." I stared at her, disbelief turning to anger. "Doesn't change what we have? You're cheating on me, Megan." "It's not about you," she said, her voice annoyingly rational, as if she was explaining something simple. "I just need something that you're not giving me right now." Her words were like gasoline on a fire. I could feel my blood boiling, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "So what? I'm not good enough for you anymore?" "That's not what I mean," she said quickly, trying to keep the peace. "It's just different." "Different?" I was losing it. "You've got some nerve, Megan. Do you even hear yourself? Do you realize how insulting that is?" She reached out, as if trying to comfort me, but I pulled away, disgusted. "I would never deny you anything, Ben," she said softly, as if that was supposed to fix it. I stood up, unable to sit there any longer. The anger was too much, the betrayal too raw. "Yeah, Thanks for the crumbs. Glad to know you're still willing to throw me a bone every now and then. I spat, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and stormed off to the living room, leaving her sitting there in silence. That night, as I sat alone, the reality hit me hard. This wasn't a marriage anymore. We were just two people living under the same roof, going through the motions for the sake of the kids. But the question was, how long could I keep pretending? After that conversation, something irreversibly shifted between Megan and me. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a shell, empty, cold, and lifeless. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was mechanical, like two business partners discussing logistics. Who's picking up the girls? Did you pay the electric bill? Gone were the warm conversations, the casual laughter. All that was left was silence, thick, suffocating silence. It was like we were both waiting for the other person to make the first move, to end the charade. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, after Megan left to be with Ryan yet again, something inside me snapped. I went down to the basement, grabbed a couple of boxes, and started packing up her things. Her clothes, her shoes, her makeup, all of it. Each item I stuffed into a box felt like I was reclaiming a part of myself. I couldn't stand the thought of her sleeping next to me, her betrayal hanging over us like a cloud. She didn't deserve to share that space anymore. When she got home later that night, it didn't take long for her to realize what I had done. "Ben, where are my clothes?" Her voice echoed through the house, sharp and demanding. I stayed calm, eerily calm. "They're in the spare room downstairs. I figured since you don't want to be with me, it's better if we have separate bedrooms." She stood there, her face a mix of anger and shock, as if she couldn't believe I had actually done something about it. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious, Megan." I turned away from her, my voice cold, final. "You made your choice and now I've made mine." From that moment, the tension in the house became unbearable. It was no longer just awkward, it was toxic. The girls, Katie and Emily, could sense it. They were confused, and I did everything I could to shield them from the chaos, taking on more of the day-to-day responsibilities. I was the one getting them ready for school, helping them with homework, making their dinners. Meanwhile, Megan slipped further and further away, both physically and emotionally. She spent more time at work, more time with Ryan, and less time with us. It was like she was slowly erasing herself from our lives, and I was left to pick up the pieces. But all that anger, all that frustration, it was too much. I needed an outlet before I exploded. So, I started running. Early in the mornings, before the sun even rose, I'd lace up my sneakers and hit the pavement. The first few runs were brutal. My legs screamed, my lungs burned. But the physical pain was almost a relief, a distraction from the mess at home. After a couple of weeks, the runs got easier. I found a rhythm, a peace in the repetitive pounding of my feet against the ground. Soon, I was running 6 miles a day, the pain replaced by a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in months. Running was my escape. But no matter how far I ran, no matter how fast, I knew I'd always come back to the same problems waiting for me at home. That's when I realized I needed something more, something to take my mind off the wreckage of my marriage, something that would bring me and the girls closer, away from the tension. That's when the idea of a camping trip hit me. We had never done anything like that before, but I needed to create new memories, good memories. I needed to give the girls and myself something to hold on to. I started looking at trailers and trucks, imagining the three of us hitting the road together. Just me, Katie, and Emily. No tension, no betrayal, just us. I knew Megan wouldn't care. She'd never been interested in the outdoors. But that didn't matter anymore. This wasn't about her. When I took the girls to a local RV show, they were more excited than I'd seen them in weeks. They ran around pointing out their favorite trailers, their faces lighting up with excitement. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw them animated, full of life. It gave me hope. I ended up finding a used Forest River travel trailer with bunk beds for the girls and enough space for the three of us. It wasn't fancy, but it had all the essentials, just enough to give us a comfortable space to escape to. I also bought a used Ford F-250 to haul it. I ended up spending more than I had planned, around $30,000, but at that point I didn't care. This wasn't just a trip. It was a chance to give the girls some kind of positive experience amidst the chaos. When I told Megan about the trailer, she barely reacted. She glanced up from her phone for a second, shrugged, and said, That's a lot of money. Do whatever you want. Her indifference cut deeper than her words. She didn't care. She had already checked out of our lives. A week later, we took our first trip. Just the three of us, me, Katie, and Emily. We drove down to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, a good 5-hour trip from Columbus. The drive was smooth, and the girls were buzzing with excitement. They needed this as much as I did. We spent the week hiking, roasting marshmallows over the campfire, and just enjoying the fresh air. It was the first time in months that I felt some semblance of peace. The girls didn't ask about their mom, which surprised me. I thought they'd miss her, but they didn't. I guess they had already grown used to her being distant. I reassured them, telling them none of this was their fault. They were too young to understand the complexity of what was happening, but they knew something was wrong. When we got back home, nothing had changed. If anything, things were worse. Megan became more detached, more wrapped up in her own world with Ryan, and I was left to hold everything together. It felt like I was living in a house with a ghost that was slowly fading out of our lives. One night, I came home from work, exhausted from the day. Megan was getting ready to go out again, dressed up like she was heading to some fancy dinner. She grabbed her purse and glanced at me with the same indifference she had shown for weeks. "I'll be back late. Don't wait up," she said casually, like it was no big deal. I didn't even bother asking where she was going. I already knew. Ryan. That night, I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the walls of our once happy home. My mind kept drifting to Katie and Emily. They deserved better than this. They deserved a real family, not this charade we were putting on. I could still hear the lawyer's voice echoing in my head. Sometimes it's cheaper to keep her. But how long could I keep living like this? The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. If I couldn't fix Megan, I could at least give the girls something worth holding on to. I started planning more trips, looking up state parks and campgrounds. It gave me something to focus on, something that felt right. It wasn't about escaping anymore. It was about building something new with my daughters, something that wasn't tainted by lies and betrayal. We deserved that. Our next trip took us to Red River Gorge in Kentucky. As we packed up the trailer, the girls buzzed with excitement, their voices filled with plans for all the things they wanted to do: hiking, swimming, roasting marshmallows, just like the last time. We hit the road, and for those few hours, it felt like we were leaving all the tension and pain behind. The beautiful scenery of the gorge surrounded us, and for a few days, it felt like we were a real family again, like things hadn't fallen apart. We explored trails that led to breathtaking views, including a natural rock arch that stretched over the forest like a window into another world. Katie and Emily stood in awe, their eyes wide with wonder as they looked out over the vast expanse of green. Seeing them like that, so full of joy and curiosity, made my heart swell. These were the moments I wanted to give them, moments untouched by the mess Megan and I had created. When we got back home, Megan didn't ask much about the trip. By then, it was clear that she had little interest in these outings. As long as I took care of everything at home, the girls, the bills, the house, she seemed content to stay lost in her world with Ryan. It was like she had chosen to carve out a separate life, one where the girls and I were just background noise. Her indifference only fueled my determination. I had to give Katie and Emily something better, something beyond this broken household. I wanted to show them that life could still be beautiful, even in the middle of all the chaos. One weekend, I decided to take the girls to an RV show in Louisville. It was a good excuse to get out of the house and dream about more adventures. Katie and Emily loved wandering through the different trailers, their eyes lighting up as they imagined all the places we could go. I watched them, trying to share in their excitement, but the whole experience was bittersweet. As much as I wanted to enjoy these moments, there was a constant ache in the back of my mind, a nagging thought about how much better it could have been if Megan cared enough to join us. But I knew by now she never would. She had made her choice. It wasn't long before I started thinking about the future in a more serious way. I realized that up until this point, I had been holding on to the marriage out of fear of losing my kids, fear of starting over, fear of being alone. But fear couldn't control my life anymore. It was time to make decisions for myself, for the girls, and for the future we deserved. I didn't tell Megan about my plans right away. I knew I had to move carefully. So, I went back to see Jessica, my lawyer. This time, I was more determined than before. We talked about how to approach custody, how to ensure that Katie and Emily stayed with me. Jessica explained that, while the courts often favored the mother, I had a good chance of getting joint custody given how involved I was in their lives. I started documenting everything. Every camping trip, every school event, every time Megan was absent or late. It wasn't about revenge, it was about showing the truth. I was the one raising these girls, not Megan. And I wasn't going to let her walk away with them while she carried on with her double life. We took another trip, this time to Hocking Hills in southern Ohio. The scenery was breathtaking, waterfalls, caves, and miles of trails that seemed to wind endlessly through the hills. The girls and I had an amazing time, just the three of us. The air was crisp, the trees vibrant with the colors of fall. And for those few days, it was like the rest of the world didn't exist. One night, as we sat around the campfire, the warmth of the flames flickering across our faces, Katie looked up at me, her eyes full of curiosity. "Daddy, why doesn't Mom ever come with us?" Her question hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been trying so hard to shield them from the reality of what was happening, to keep them insulated from the ugliness of it all. But they were smarter than I gave them credit for. I stared into the fire, my chest tightening. "I don't know, sweetie," I said, my voice careful, steady. "Mom's got a lot going on right now." Katie nodded thoughtfully, as if she understood more than she let on. Then she smiled a soft, innocent smile. "Well, I'm glad it's just us." Her words lingered in the air, a bittersweet mix of comfort and sadness. As much as I wanted to protect them from the truth, I knew that eventually, I'd have to explain why their mother was no longer a part of these moments. But not yet. For now, all I wanted was to give them memories they could hold on to when everything else started falling apart. A few months later, I hit my breaking point. Megan and I were barely speaking, and when we did, the tension was unbearable. The girls had picked up on it too, even if they didn't say it out loud. I could see it in their eyes, in the way they hesitated before asking questions, like they were trying to make sense of the unspoken battle between their parents. I couldn't live like this anymore. The charade was suffocating, and it was clear Megan didn't care enough to fix what was left of our marriage. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, I sat Megan down. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I had made up my mind, and there was no turning back now. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. She barely looked up from her phone, her expression uninterested. "What about this marriage?" I said. "It's over, Megan. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce." For a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of shock in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She sighed, setting her phone down with an air of exhaustion. "Ben, come onorevole. You don't have to do this. I told you what I have with Ryan, it's nothing. We can still make this work." Her words felt hollow, almost rehearsed. Like she wasn't even trying to convince me, but just saying what she thought I wanted to hear. "Megan, it's not just about Ryan. It's about everything. You checked out of this marriage a long time ago. I can't keep pretending everything's okay. Not for me, and not for the girls." She sighed again, heavier this time, as if I was being unreasonable. "You're making a mistake. The kids need both of us, and you know that." "Do they?" I could feel the frustration creeping into my voice. "When was the last time you did anything with them, Megan? When was the last time you spent a full day with them without running off to be with Ryan?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. We both knew the truth. Her face flushed with anger. "Don't you dare paint me as a bad mother. I've done my best." "Your best?" I snapped, unable to hold back. "You've barely been here. The girls deserve better than living in this lie. And I'm done pretending." She paced the room, her frustration palpable. "Fine. File for divorce, if that's what you want. But I'm their mother. I'm not walking away from them." I shook my head, tired of the battle. "I'm not asking you to walk away. But we both know you haven't been there like you should. The court will see that." Megan stormed off, slamming the door behind her. I sat in the kitchen, feeling a mix of relief and fear. This was the right decision, but the uncertainty of what came next weighed heavy on me. The next morning I put things in motion. Jessica, my lawyer, was confident. I had documented everything, Megan's absences, her affair, and the time I spent raising the girls. We had a strong case for custody. The hardest part was telling Katie and Emily. One Sunday afternoon, after a walk, I sat them down. Katie, Emily, I said, my heart pounding. Mom and I were going to live apart. We've decided it's best for everyone. Katie's face tightened. Are you getting a divorce? I nodded, trying to stay composed. Yes, but we love you both, and nothing changes that. Emily looked confused. Do we have to live in two houses? Yes, sweetie. You'll stay with me most of the time, but you'll see Mom too. Katie's eyes brimmed with tears. Why can't you and Mom just be happy again? I wished I had an answer. I wish we could, Katie. But sometimes people grow apart. It's not your fault. The following weeks were rough. Megan moved out, settling into a small downtown apartment. The girls stayed with me, but visited her on the weekends. They were confused, hurt, but I did my best to create stability. Megan's visits became inconsistent, her mind elsewhere, likely still with Ryan. It was hard watching her drift further away from the family, but I focused on the girls. Our camping trips became our safe haven. We traveled everywhere, Michigan's Upper Peninsula, the Smoky Mountains, escaping reality for a little while. As time passed, I adapted to life as a single dad. It wasn't easy, but I had my girls, and that was enough. Slowly, we found a new rhythm, one that didn't include Megan. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my life again. As the months passed, life settled into a new rhythm. Megan had her apartment downtown, and the girls and I built our own routine. Katie and Emily adjusted better than I expected. But there were moments when I could see the strain in their eyes. They were trying to make sense of it all, leaning on each other and on me. Megan wasn't as involved as I had hoped. She took the girls every other weekend, but it was clear her interest in spending time with them was fading. She'd often drop them off early or cancel plans, citing work or something to do with Ryan. The girls never said much, but I knew they noticed. They were getting used to her absence, and that hurt more than I wanted to admit. I kept things steady at home. Work was reliable, and I made sure to be there for the girls after school. The camping trips became our sanctuary, our escape from the mess of real life. We visited Lake Erie, explored the dunes, and even made it to Wisconsin to see the Apostle Islands. Those trips pulled us closer, and I saw a new openness in Katie and Emily. Katie, usually reserved, began to ask tough questions. One night, as we sat by the campfire, roasting marshmallows, Katie asked quietly, Dad, do you think Mom will ever come back? I stared into the flickering flames, feeling the weight of the question. I don't think so, Katie. Mom and I, we just grew apart. She poked at the fire with a stick, her face thoughtful. I miss how things used to be. I do too, kiddo, I said, wrapping my arm around her. But that doesn't mean we can't still have good times. It's just different now. Emily, still too young to fully grasp the situation, seemed happy just being with me. She lived in the moment, her energy contagious on our trips. But I knew someday she would have her own questions, and I'd need to be ready for them. A few months after the divorce was finalized, I met someone. Her name was Rachel. We crossed paths at an outdoor gear store, and she was there with her son, Jack, who was about Emily's age. We got to talking about camping gear, and before I knew it, I asked her out for coffee. It felt strange stepping into the dating world again, but Rachel was kind, easy to talk to. There was no pressure, just two people enjoying each other's company. As we spent more time together, Rachel and Jack joined us on a few camping trips. The girls took to Jack quickly, and Rachel fit right in. She loved the outdoors as much as I did, and soon, our weekend getaways felt like the beginning of something more, a blended family. I didn't rush things. Katie and Emily had already been through so much, and I didn't want to confuse them or make them feel replaced. But after a few months, it felt right. The girls seemed to like Rachel, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. Meanwhile, Megan drifted further into her own world. I heard rumors that things with Ryan weren't going as smoothly as she'd hoped. Some said he was seeing someone else, but I didn't care to dig into it. Megan and I barely spoke anymore, except for the logistics of picking up and dropping off the girls. Her absence from their lives became more obvious, and I had to step up even more to fill the gaps. One evening, after a weekend with her mom, Katie came home unusually quiet. I asked how the visit went, but she just shrugged. Later that night, once Emily had gone to bed, Katie finally opened up. Mom didn't stay with us, she said softly, staring at the floor. She dropped us at Grandma's and didn't come back until Sunday morning. A surge of anger rose inside me, but I swallowed it down. Shorty, Katie, did you at least have a good time with Grandma? She nodded, but her eyes stayed downcast. Yeah, but I don't get why she didn't want to be with us. I sighed, searching for the right words. Your mom, she's going through some stuff right now, but that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. Sometimes people make choices that hurt others, even if they don't mean to. Katie looked up at me, her eyes a mix of confusion and sadness. Why can't she just be like you, Dad? I didn't have an answer. All I could do was hug her, reassuring her that I'd always be there. That moment stuck with me, a reminder that, no matter what, I had to be the steady one they could count on. As time passed, Rachel and I grew closer. The girls became comfortable around her, and Jack, her son, quickly felt like a little brother to them. We didn't rush things, but eventually we started talking about the future. Moving in together became a possibility, though we took our time, ensuring the girls were ready for that change. Life was different, but in many ways it was better. I was no longer trapped in a loveless marriage. I was building something new with Rachel, and the girls were happy. That was all I could ask for. Megan's involvement in their lives dwindled more and more, and as hard as it was to accept, I realized that sometimes the hardest part of moving on is letting go of the life you imagined. But that didn't mean it couldn't still be good. Over the next year, Rachel and I continued to blend our families. Jack fit in well with Katie and Emily, becoming a lively addition to the household. After many conversations and careful thought, we decided it was time to take the next step. We moved into a new house on the outskirts of Columbus, with a big backyard where the kids could run around. The girls were thrilled, especially when they saw how close we were to a park with hiking trails and a creek. It wasn't just a new house, it was a fresh start for all of us. Of course, blending two families came with challenges. There were arguments over toys, rooms, and sibling rivalry, but Rachel and I tackled it together. We set boundaries, created new routines, and tried to make it fair for everyone. Megan, meanwhile, became more distant. After her split from Ryan, I thought she might refocus on being present for Katie and Emily. But if anything, her absence grew worse. She missed more and more weekends. And even when she did see the girls, her heart wasn't in it. She was lost in her own life. And I had to accept that she would never be the mother they needed. Katie saw it too. Now old enough to understand, she stopped asking why her mom wasn't around as much and leaned on me more. Rachel, in time, began to fill some of the void Megan left behind. Emily, still young and carefree, seemed to adjust more easily, as if she had already accepted the way things were. One evening, as Rachel and I prepared dinner, Katie quietly entered the kitchen. She watched us for a moment before speaking. "Do you think Mom's ever going to come back? Like really come back?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. I turned off the burner and knelt down to look her in the eyes. "Katie, I don't know. I wish I could say she will, but I can't. What I can promise is that I'll always be here for you. And so will Rachel. We love you, and we're not going anywhere." Her eyes welled up, and she hugged me tightly. I held her close, knowing this was something she'd carry with her for a long time. But I also knew she was strong, stronger than I'd ever realized. As time passed, our blended family grew stronger. We created new traditions, summer camping trips, Sunday game nights. It wasn't always perfect, but we were happy. We were together. Megan became a shadow, her visits with the girls dwindling. Katie and Emily eventually stopped asking about her, sensing her absence as more of an obligation than love. It was hard not to resent her, but I knew I had to focus on what I could control, the life I was building with Rachel and the kids. One summer, we took a cross-country camping trip. We spent 3 weeks exploring national parks, from the Grand Canyon to Yellowstone. Seeing the kids light up with excitement made it all worth it. One evening, under a blanket of stars in the middle of nowhere, Katie leaned over and said, "Dad, this is the best summer I've ever had." I smiled, pulling her close as we watched the stars twinkle above. In that moment, I realized something important. Life isn't about holding on to what's broken or waiting for someone else to change. It's about moving forward, finding happiness where you can, and being there for the people who matter. Rachel squeezed my hand, and I knew I had found something real. I had built the family I needed, and the girls had found the love and stability they deserved. Megan may have walked away, but in her absence, we had created something even stronger. And in the end, that was enough.